Hi, and welcome to this quiz entitled Name the Key. So it's what it says on the tin. We're going to look at 4 melodic excerpts and see if we can work out which key we're in. Now, if you're good at keys, this shouldn't be too tricky, though there are 1 or 2 little dilemmas that I've set. If you're not sure about keys, well, this is a great opportunity to sort of get sorted. And if you don't know about this, do have a look at our video on the circle of fifths. The circle of fifths is the answer to all your woes with keys. It tells you which keys have which sharps, which flats, and I explain the whole thing as to how the whole circle of fifths is constructed, and that will be your lifeline with keys. So don't go through the rest of your musical life not being sure about which key you're in or how many sharps or how many flats there are, and is it major, is it minor? The circle of fifths would explain it all to you. So if that's where you're coming from, you might just want to pause on this one and have a look for the circle of fifths first, and then come back to this one. If you think you're okay with keys, you might just want to kind of freeze the picture at this moment, have a look through and see if you can come up with some answers, and then come back to me and compare your answers with mine, see how you get on. Okay, let's have a look through. Now, melody number 1 has got 4 sharps in the key signature: F sharp, C sharp, G sharp and D sharp. So you may know this key because you've been playing it or you work with it, or you may want to refer to the circle of fifths. So if you're looking at the circle of fifths, just look at the sharps on the right hand side. You'll see F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. Okay, the key with 4 sharps, and that will tell you that you're either in the key of E major or in the key of C sharp minor, because remember, you've always got a major key and a minor key that share each key signature. So the question is, how do we know we're in E major or in C sharp minor? One of the clues, and this doesn't always tell you the answer, so be careful, but one of the clues is, are there any more accidentals that appear during the piece? Because if there are, it might just be a clue that maybe you're in a minor key. Why do I say that? When you're in a minor key, well, if you're using the harmonic minor scale, you'll raise the 7th degree of the scale. If you're using the melodic minor, you'll raise the 6th and 7th degree of the scale in the ascending form. You won't in the descending form. So sometimes when you see accidentals beyond the key signature, it's a bit of a clue that maybe you're in a minor key. But I say that, it comes with a health warning. So let me explain the health warning. It's possible that accidentals will appear for other reasons. For example, what happens if the tune starts in the key of E major, for example, and then it modulates, it moves to a different key. And when it does that, we're going to start introducing the accidentals for that new key. So it may start in E major and then it may go somewhere else. So be a little bit careful. It doesn't necessarily mean because there's an accidental down here somewhere that it must be in C sharp minor. It may be modulating somewhere else. You may even have little what we call chromatic notes, notes that don't quite belong to the key, but they just sort of colour the melody a little bit, just a splash of colour. So they may be there because they're using these things called inessential notes. So you might have chromatic passing notes or chromatic auxiliary notes or things like that. And if you don't know what they are, guess what? You can find another Music Matters video that explains everything. Watch out for accidentals and consider the possibility that they might be telling you about a minor key. Now, if you do see an accidental, well, the next question is, what is the accidental? Because if you were to see some B sharp, say this note over here is B sharp, well, B sharp would be a raised 7th in C sharp minor. So that might be a big clue that we're doing something in C sharp minor. But if you saw sort of E sharp or something, well, that wouldn't be telling you that you're in C sharp minor, because in E major, you've got those 4 sharps. In C sharp minor, you've got the same 4 sharps, but you wouldn't be expecting to raise the 3rd degree of the scale. It would only be doing that if it was modulating to another key, like F sharp minor or F sharp major, for example. So you've got to use a little bit of musical nous with this. If you see a raised seventh in particular, or possibly a raised sixth, or you see a bit of a mixture of raised sixth, raised seventh, not raised sixth, not raised seventh, well, that's very likely telling you about a minor key. But consider the option that also it might be modulating to another key, or it might be doing something chromatic to decorate the melody. Well, in the first example here, it's fairly straightforward really, because we don't see any accidentals during the course of the melody. So is it E major or C sharp minor? The fact that I don't see any accidentals rather suggests that it's in E major. Other clues. The first note is E. The last note is E. That doesn't always mean that it's in the key of E major. It doesn't have to start and finish on E, but the fact that it does kind of makes it a little bit clearer. What's even more useful to determine is when you look at that E at the end, does that E belong to the tonic chord of E major? Well, it does actually. Having said that, it also belongs to the tonic chord of C sharp minor, but there's a B natural before it, so it's not looking like C sharp minor, is it? So if you can sort of finish on a tonic chord and start on a tonic chord, which you could, well, maybe that's another indicator. Music doesn't always begin on a tonic chord, but quite often it does. So you're kind of looking for things to just substantiate what you're doing. You might even look at cadences. If you know about cadences, it's possible to harmonize this 5-1, perfect cadence in E major. So that's kind of really helping us to fish out the evidence that supports the idea that we're in the key of E major. So that's the answer to number 1. Have a look at number 2, and immediately you see 5 flats. It's interesting how some people are really comfortable working in 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 sharps, 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 flats. And after that, they kind of go into this haze where they think, oh my goodness, I can't cope with more complicated key signatures. Any musician who wants to do the journey needs to get familiar with every single key. And one thing you can do is improvise in every single key on your instrument so that you really get familiar with it and you kind of understand it from a kind of playing perspective. So good thing to ask yourself, how far can I go in terms of key and feel comfortable? Where do I start to fall off? And start working on the next keys so that they get as confident as you are when you're playing in C major or G major or F major. Anyway, 5 flats. If we look on the circle of fifths, 5 flats will tell us, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. You'll see them on the outer ring on the left-hand side, and they're going to point up 2 keys, D flat major and B flat minor. So those are the 2 options. Let's have a look. What's going on here? Well, first thing I'm noticing is a couple of accidentals. Well, I suppose it could start in D flat major, then maybe it modulates towards the end. But, let's see what these accidentals are telling us. Well, G natural is a raised 6 in the key of B flat minor. Bit of a clue. A natural is a raised 7th in the key of B flat minor. So it may be that these naturals are telling us something else, a bit of chromatic decoration, a modulation or something, but the fact that they're the raised 6th and 7th in B flat minor, which has 5 flats, is a bit of a clue. What's the last note? B flat. So tonic to finish. What's the first note? Oh, it's not B flat. However, this is an anacrusis. It doesn't start on the first beat of the bar, so that's what we call an anacrusis. So quite often when you start on the last beat of a bar, you kind of go dominant tonic. What happens here? Dominant tonic. So this is the tonic, is it? B flat minor. I'm sort of looking at this thinking this is kind of going up a scale of B flat minor, isn't it? And then this is kind of completing that scale of B flat minor, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G natural, A natural, B flat. They've kind of got the scale of B flat minor embedded in the melody. So all those things would help me to be clear that number 2 is in the key of B flat minor. Okay, I'm wondering how you're getting on with this. Okay, number 3. We've got 2 flats. So let's have a look on the circle of fifths. On the left-hand side, outer ring, first flat's B flat, second flat's E flat. So we're either in B flat major or we're in G minor. Well, I'm looking through, I don't see any accidentals anywhere, do I? So I'm already thinking, must be in B flat major. However, before you commit to that, I've set a little trap, because I'm like that. Can you see the first note's G? Can you see the last note's G? Which are the notes that would be altered if I were in the key of G minor? Well, the raised seventh would be F going to F sharp. So are there any Fs in this tune? No, there aren't. So we don't really know if there were to be Fs in this tune. Would they be F natural? Would they be F sharp? Could be either. Oh. What about the sixth degree? That's the other one that could be raised. So that will be E flat. That would become E natural. Can I see any E's in the tune? No, I can't. So do you see, now we're asking you to be a sort of musical detective. Up here, we could see things that were telling us exactly which key we're in. Now we're looking at something thinking, well, the only thing is that we can't see any E's or F's. So we don't know if it's E flat and F natural. That might help us to be thinking B flat major, or we don't know if they might be E natural, F sharp. That might be helping us to think G minor. So the fact that we don't see any accidentals could lead us to the wrong conclusion. But how on earth are we supposed to work with things we can't see? How do we know? Well, what other evidence do we see? The last note is G. The first note is G. Now, if you were in B flat major, why would you start and finish on the sixth degree of the scale? It's a bit unlikely, actually. If you can think in chords, well, chord 1 in G minor would fit here. Chord 5 in G minor would fit here, so that could be a perfect cadence in G minor. In B flat major, well, it could be 5 to 6. It could be an interrupted cadence, but why would you finish a piece on a kind of cliffhanger, interrupted cadence? So it's probably not going to be that. So do you see, the balance of evidence starts to make us think, actually, you know what? We don't see any E naturals or F sharps, but we're beginning to think that we might be in G minor, especially the G start, the G finish, tonic chord G minor, perfect cadence G minor. If you look through the rest of it, you might harmonize this with a chord 1 in G minor. That might look like a chord 5 in G minor. Oh, it's starting to look much more like G minor than it is B flat major. So tricky one in a way, because it's sort of there by implication. So I wonder how many people thought that was in B flat major, and I wonder how many people just went that extra mile and thought about the evidence that might point us to G minor. And the answer is that one is definitely in G minor. Okay, now what about number 4? Well, I don't like to make life too easy for you, so I thought, just to add to the fun, let's have one in the alto clef. If you're a viola player, or maybe a first trombonist in an orchestra or something, you're probably quite happy with this. Everybody else might be scratching their heads thinking, oh, alto clef. But you know how the alto clef works. Middle C is in the middle of it. And so if that's the C line, this is going to be D. So, you know, let's have a look through. 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. Circular fifths, first sharp F sharp, second sharp C sharp. We're either in D major or we're in B minor. Okay. Scan through the piece. Oh, what am I looking at the end? I can see a sharp. What is this note? A sharp. Well, if I'm in B minor, A sharp actually is the raised seventh, isn't it? So it's looking possibly like a B minor touch, isn't it? And the last note is B. So B minor being suggested there. On the other hand, you might look at this and think, well, it starts on D, you know, and I go through here D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, A. Well, I don't see any of this raised 6th and 7th lark back here. So why are these not raised? Well, they don't have to be if you're in a minor key, but they could be. This is one of these interesting things where it's possible that you could harmonize the whole of that melody in the key of B minor. Another possibility exists. Maybe it starts in D major and then it modulates to B minor. So that was just me trying to catch you out with that one. But it's possible you could have the whole thing in B minor. If you harmonize it in B minor, you could actually go. You could do that, but it might work better in D major. Maybe to go to B minor. So you can hear how that might be better as a modulating melody. Anyway, Anyway, hope you had some fun with that. Hope you enjoyed going through the reasoning for why things might be in this key or that key, and I hope it gives you a bit more confidence about keys.